of the cars that
Yeah.
I see on the road. And I think that developing a carpooling app that matches people's destinations and schedules
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be that difficult to generate, and maybe something already exists that we could direct people toward.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, the question is whose job is that? So, I mean, we're doing the education piece, I guess, I think that would be really valuable. And I think it's a way we have to go anyways, whether or not we have traffic snarls. The question is whose job could that be? Can there be somebody who can be interested in making that an innovative business for themselves? Or is it something that can, be maybe initially encouraged through the municipality that eventually becomes, its own service? I don't know what those options are, but I think that's very valuable. Absolutely.
Maybe a student capstone project.
Well, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
Councillor Pearson?
Yes, thank you. And I apologize to you and everybody else here for being late for your presentation, but thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of questions, and the communication I think is key. I really want to see more ramped up, and in your workshops, I think if money talks for motivation for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We're all, around the table, we're all, I believe we're in a climate emergency and we understand that. But when it comes down to household income, affordability and all these things, but like my own story that I would like to share is I put a heat pump in my house 2 years ago, and my heating costs were absolutely, slashed by
Dramatic.
70%. But we don't hear that. We hear about when we apply for a grant and we
Exactly.
and I wrote down here what went well and what could we do better. So I think we need to be in the communication piece of that, sharing stories about what happens when you do put a heat pump in.
Exactly.
Not just about go put a heat pump in
Yeah.
because you're looking at a $15,000 to $20,000 bill.
Yeah.
What you need to understand is that there's a payback. We're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
And
immediate payback.
exactly.
Yeah.
And mine was dramatic.
Yeah.
So I like
Yeah.
that part of it. Around the metrics, Sooke's greenhouse annual report, you talk about that. So we have a reduction target of 7% per year. But I wonder how we can communicate that in a way that is understandable. I think I can get it. And I think that we need to share that because our population is going like this, right? So along with that population is also the greenhouse gas emissions are escalating. So are we actually meeting our target when the actual output is higher?
Right.
So somehow we need to share that, yes, per capita or something like.
Yes,
different
exactly.
metric.
That's exactly it. So, I mean, if we look at the CRD, even with the growth, the emissions have come down slightly.
Yes.
So we know that there's progress, but can we break that out for ourselves? And it's one of the reasons we're asking that the building code be shifted and escalated towards the net zero step 4 code, because then even though we have growth, it doesn't mean that the emissions go up.
Right.
Right. And that's the goal.
Exactly.
So if we can reach that, then, and that requires good policy. And I think, as you're saying, incentives and disincentives work. That's
Absolutely.
how most policy is designed. So if we can think about ways to design that ensure that we're not leaving, a carbon footprint behind ourselves, then I think we're well on the way to a new era. Yeah.
So the last piece I want to ask you about, which I think is critical. Am I allowed one more question?
Quickly.
Okay. Is around the advocacy.
I got the two of you as well, and we have the rest of the agenda as well.
Yeah. Is around the advocacy piece, because I'm hearing mixed messages. Like, you turn the TV on and the federal government is fighting with the largest union, which is the union of, PSAC. They're fighting about going back to work. Yet I didn't hear anywhere in that messaging from the union or from the people who are working from home about it's better for the climate. So those are in, those messages, because the Downtown Association wants those people back to work so they can spend money in their lunch, in the restaurants and things like that. So anyways, I think that the advocacy piece is something that's critical.
Yes.
It should flow from grassroots groups. Thank you.
Okay.
Counselor Bateman, then St. Pierre.
Okay, I'll make this quick. Back to the how we lead priorities coming out of the
Okay.
climate action plan. I think it's important to remind everyone that we hired Jaden Riley as our manager of community planning with a strong climate action focus.
Yes,
And then we lost our
congratulations
director
on
of
that.
planning not long after he was hired, and now we've got director of planning Chris Marshall's here. So I think the time is well positioned that we have our low carbon resilience approach. And there is a low carbon resilience planning handbook that was produced by
Yes.
Simon Fraser last year. So this will be a good guideline. And Jaden, I think, is positioned to take over as climate champion for the district, just as
Okay.
Christina Mogg has been these last. So I think, as Councillor Beto says, there's been a lot of talk over these 6 years and actions. And thank you for this boot in the rear to remind us that there is so much more to be done.
Thank you. Yeah, we just need to ramp up things a little bit.
Counselor St. Pierre.
So I also want to thank you for the report because I think, as you pointed out, we need conversations, and this is a good conversation to be having right here, right now. I would like to follow up on what Councillor Jeunesse was saying in terms of the carpooling. I remember that when the pandemic struck, the government basically said, stay home unless you have something really important to do. And all of a sudden the roads were clear and the commute to Langford took, 20 minutes and there was no problem. I think it's important in all of this that we get the help from the feds and the province in terms of actually doing that education work. I think you're absolutely right that more needs to be done, but it needs to be done almost across Canada at the national level with this clear messaging. So I'm going to suggest to everyone on council here right now that as we move into our next piece, which is going to be advocacy work, that we maybe go to the province and say, listen, we now need help with this critical advocacy work. We have a report, we have information, we know it needs to be done. Everyone agrees it's across Canada, it's across the province. But we don't have the deep pockets to hire as many communication, education people as we need to actually get this message out. And also, quite frankly, I don't know if we can actually have the credibility in terms of all messaging that needs to happen. So I think that what we really would love to see happen right now, at least from my point of view, is some help from the province and the feds. And I'm just going to put that forward right now, but I think that that's what's coming out of this for me.
I would like to respond to that in two ways. One is, I think at the municipal level, you have the most power to get the messages out. Absolutely. But you might need funding for that. And that's maybe where you go to other levels. I think that the federal government has so many other intersecting priorities right now that's kind of distracting it, that getting the messages out is not as powerful as getting the messages out would be. So I agree in part with you, but I think that we cannot underestimate the power of local government with lots of relationships into the community. The power to get those messages out, I think, lies with you.
Any other questions or queries from counselors? If I sound agitated, it's because I don't see you. And then right when we're about to move, it's like, no, I want to ask something. So if you do have a comment, I need to see your hand and I only see in one direction in the way that I'm looking. So I don't see what's happening over here. But if you're, so you have something more.
Just throw in a couple of points around the discussion. The carpooling piece, the CRD's forming this in. It hasn't happened yet, but the Transportation Authority and behavioral change will be a key piece of that. So I would hope that coming out of the CRD in that planning process will be a regional carpooling strategy. And also with the telecommuting hub, WorkLink is developing one on its site as phase 2 of its site. So I think, again, emphasizing the positive always, that things are happening.
But getting those messages out so that people know that these things will be coming available in a certain time frame. I mean, we talk to people on the street and they're always confused because so-and-so had this experience, so-and-so had that experience. And so they're getting lots of input from lots of different directions that isn't necessarily accurate. So, I think if you were the source of information, then and that went out in multiple different ways, it would be consistent, it would be accurate. And I think that's part of what's needed.
Okay, thank you very
Mhm,
much. Just a
thank you.
few pieces on the co-working space that Councillor Bateman just touched on. That report is under developments
Okay.
and will be coming to council hopefully before we recess for the summer. So that's
Okay.
underway.
Good.
In terms of some of it is contingent on employers and what their policy around work from home is. So I believe with the CRD right now, it's work from home. Not, I think with the province, it's maybe 2 days a week. That might be under review.
Okay.
And so it's going to vary in with different employers, and
Yeah, of
that's
course. Yeah.
going to depend on where people work and what they're doing. In terms of communications, when I first got elected, it was very easy. I had a telephone that was connected to the wall with a cord. I had a flip phone that I used for emergency purposes, and we had a very robust paper that was delivered every week. The paper still exists, and there were only a few channels on TV that we all tuned into for the news. No one looked at an app or downloaded this. Facebook was a way of connecting with new and old friends. And now it's multiple platforms
Exactly. That's
across the
problem.
board. So it's somehow I hear certainly what you're saying. It's just very challenging now to navigate all of the platforms that are out there. Some of them I don't even know fully how they work. And just to monitor everything that's on there. With the rise of all these platforms is also a rise in what's called cybersecurity. And so for every post, for example, that I put out, I can expect 20 other scams in return. Everything that gets pushed out this way comes to this. So then we have to block, delete everything. You have to make sure your profile isn't hijacked and all of that, which all takes a lot of time and a lot of buffering to do. We are, though, however, going to the reliable print publication and putting messages in monthly, an opportunity where residents can subscribe and hear more. But I hear you. I was chatting with someone who didn't even know we had a mayor and council. So lived in the town for 5 years. And
Wow.
I get that often.
Yeah.
Not often, but it happens once a
Mhm.
month. And sentiment that maybe we still have either a reeve or an electoral area representative. So I'm like, what
Mhm.
piece are we missing here in this? But it's multiple platforms, and it can be a lot to navigate at times, but we have a communications officer, and that is something that was not in place for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I hope, this is a hope for the future, is that as we build out, whether it's committees or liaisons or stakeholder groups, that the messaging that we do can also be shared out, as
Yeah.
opposed to us having to defend or re-educate in what we're doing with community stakeholders, is finding ways
Yeah.
to share out so they can say, oh, in the local level, the local government is doing this, the provincial government is that, the federal government is this, we as this community is doing this. So it's all, like you say, the web of all of us doing something together,
Exactly.
as
Yeah.
opposed to the municipality doing it all for everyone. It's
Mhm.
overwhelming. Realities are very different. I was late as usual, getting up this morning and out the door, dropped my child off at the school. And as always, when I do that, sometimes see a lot of children that are arriving hungry in school.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it's just parents and families here navigating with the best they can with what they have, which is a really hard time for a lot of people.
Yeah, lots of
And
people are at a survival level for sure.
yeah, and it's a sad reality to
Yeah.
see. But grateful that the PACs are doing what they're doing. So
Mm.
anyway, thank you for
Mm.
your time today.
Yeah, thank you to all of you. I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you. Okay, we'll move on to our next item here, which brings us to advocacy and UBCM convention meeting requests. And so our staff had surveyed council in terms of looking ahead to the week of UBCM. The interesting one for this, all of this to note, is that the Saturday following UBCM, the writ will drop, which means that the government will move into a pure caretaker position. And so the timing, nothing new can be introduced until the next government forms. It's just the reality of the timing of things, so. Anyway, I'll turn this over to staff to walk us through the report. We will after each item that comes forward here. That was a delegation with no report to council. But if you have comments, perhaps we can find time at the end, because the report section here, which is all published out in advance, will have an opportunity for people to speak after each one. Okay, over to staff, please.
Hi, can you hear me, Mayor and Council?
Yes, clearly, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. My apologies for being out of the office today. Through the mayor to council, today you are seeing a staff report outlining potential recommendations for UBCM convention meeting requests. This is on the agenda today as the deadline for ministerial meetings is coming up shortly. I believe it is June 21st. So towards the end of this week is the submission deadline to make the ministerial requests. We did have a little bit of time after for some of the ministry staff requests, but we did include this all in one staff report in order to ensure that we get our submissions off early. As a result, as you are aware, staff sent out a previous survey to mayor and council to provide information to present the recommendations in the staff report. So all of the submissions of individual councilors have been included in the recommendations section for council's consideration today. And of course, if there's anything that council would like to add that isn't being represented within this staff report recommendations, this would certainly be the time to do so. Thank you, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. So as I see this, in the first part, we have 4 cabinet minister requests: municipal affairs, transportation and infrastructure, education, childcare, public safety, and solicitor general. And then the next series are staff specifically. And then we have outside agencies. So I'll just suggest that it's my view that we push these all forward. However, there's the potential that we could cancel out of a few. So for example, I know that the school trustees are actively looking to have their business case approved. That may or may not impact our need to have a meeting with the minister responsible. But childcare would be one that would still stand. And similarly, there's information flowing around VIMQ, but it's just the timing is never perfect. So we have to go with what we know. And this is what we know right now. It could change in the future and go from there. So is there anything that you don't want to see on this list, or that if you want changed or added? Councillor St. Pierre, I see you. Then I'll go to Councillor Beddoes.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I had a request that maybe we want to bring up with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Mental Health, the funding that we're providing for prenatal care and for the suicide crisis line. I think those should be provincial responsibilities. We talk about it every time the grants come up. This is something we could do during this round of visits.
Okay, that's a good idea. So under Ministry of Health, I believe, would be to add funding for prenatal care.
Yeah.
Then the other one would be under, we have a request for staff for the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. We may as well add that bullet, because then we can also show what we've been funding collectively out of taxpayer dollars for X amount of years. Okay, thank you for that. Anything else?
Yes, I was thinking that under BC Hydro, one of the things that actually keeps a lot of people from getting involved with solar power or even any other sort of renewable energy is that the buyback program from BC Housing doesn't really create a good business case for it. I think that we should be asking BC Hydro to look at what other provinces have done to actually incentivize residential investment in renewable energy to make our communities more resilient.
Okay, what would that one bullet look like?
Might look like incentive program, buyback power as an incentive program for renewable energy.
Okay,
The next one that I had was around the Ministry of Transportation. I don't know if this is actually already covered, but I want to mention it anyway. I think that if the Ministry of Transportation or the province was to actually help us with our transportation master plan to take cars off Route 14 and into our local road network, we could take cars off Route 14 immediately. I mean, this is part of that efficient, effective action that the public is screaming for, but we don't have the funding to actually make the transportation master plan happen. But the province or ministry does. And I think we should be advocating on that.
okay, so something in addition to what's already under item B?
If it's felt that that's not covered, but I think it's very specific. I think that they should be helping us pay for our TMP to take cars off Route 14.
Okay, so maybe. I don't know. I think part of this is in here is request a commitment to direct staff to identify the next phase of corridor improvements. Now that the work 2017 is complete, ensure funding for this work is included in the ministry's 10-year capital plan. The need for a second bridge in its near term, and discuss the vision for Highway 14 addressing current transportation issues. So you're looking at funding to provide an alternate.
Well, what we're looking at in our TMP partly is almost a bypass going through Wadhams and Grant, which if it included a transit priority would actually provide some relief on Route 14 for sure. But we don't have the funding as of yet, and there's no guarantees through any other means to get the funding to make this happen, which means that unless they're planning on spending billions to double up Route 14 or some such, which I don't think is in the cards and would actually cripple our transportation while the work was underway, it's one of the few ways to actually improve things, but we don't have the money ourselves and no guarantee of getting it.
No, I'm aware of that. So it would be infrastructure funding to implement and complete the TMP.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you're good?
I think there was something else, but I'll come back to it if I remember. Thank you.
Right, anything, Councillor Beddoes, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm under the heading A, Minister of Municipal Affairs, third bullet down, discuss the RV homeowner pilot project proposed by the Sooke Homeless Coalition's Community Action Team. I'm part of that team, and I'm not aware of. First of all, there hasn't been anything being flushed out about a RV homeowner pilot project, and the second is that one topic is solely under the municipal. We can handle that internally. We don't. Why are we going to the province on that one?
Okay, I'll ask Councillor Bateman to address that.
Okay, so this was an electronic survey. I knocked off those 3 points from municipal affairs in short order. I don't know what anyone else contributed to that category. In hindsight, I was going to request today that item 3 be removed from municipal affairs, because it is going to come up later under the proposed ministry meetings. So I'd be happy to remove that. And
I just need
Councillor Beddoes, I
clarification.
have shared with you the correspondence we sent to the former premier and to Ravi Parmar regarding the RV homeowner matchmaking a couple of times now. So I'll send it again.
No,
just so that
you don't have to send me anything. It's when a proposal comes from the committee, it has to come from all of the committee.
It's
correct?
not a committee, it's a community action team. The Sooke Homelessness Coalition is a separate entity and the parent organization of the community action team. So
I think what I'm hearing is perhaps Councillor Beddoes was expecting like a council resolution to endorse something to move on. And maybe this is in the progress of getting to that point. Okay, so, but you're comfortable removing this from this item. And sometimes more of us might have written and answered and wrote the same thing.
very
Okay, yes. Okay, other comments, Councillor Beddoes, then I'll go to La Jeunesse.
No, I don't like the lectures, but that's another.
Okay, thank you, Councillor La Jeunesse.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is would be something that would be worth talking to the health minister about, but much of the work that our Sooke Fire and Rescue do is work that should be done by BC Ambulance. And I'm wondering if we can get some funding to help prop that up a little bit.
Okay, so I would add, under this third section is a meeting with BC Ambulance. And the intention would be there to is an update on their service levels. And what we need from the Ministry of Health is to focus in and to approve our service planning request. So I'm sorry, but if we don't get an answer by then, I don't want to give the ministry an out by talking about ambulance. Because we have to have that plan approved. It's 18 months. And we're still waiting. And so anytime you come in, it's a 20-minute audience. And you need to be clear. And if you start to add in other things, where do you think that conversation is going? This thing has to be a priority. And I think on the subset is BC Ambulance and understanding. I'm sorry, Councillor Lajeunesse, but I need the minister to give us an answer. Yes or no, you're funding us or you aren't. Same question we had last year. And the year before. Other questions from members of council? Or comments or asks, additions, changes? Councillor Bateman?
So under the ministry meetings, as opposed to minister meetings, the staff meetings, so Minister of Health, I was wondering if we could add Air Manor, the expansion of Air Manor.
Yeah, so I'm corrected here that, I'm correcting myself, and thank you for catching this, Councillor Bateman, is under the Ministry of Health. It is with the staff that we're meeting with.
Right.
So I think we'll just see where we're at. Maybe we can put that in there. Because Air Manor also has a wait list that is unmanageable at this
Crazy.
point for their independent living, and they're able to
Complex.
expand. But part of it is this conversation. If we don't have a result to our service planning, we can pivot to the other ones if we get the meeting. Does that sound reasonable? We can throw an ambulance. Maybe everything will be approved by then. I mean, that's where we have to shift. It's this timeline, right? It's where we are now. This may change by the time the meeting comes, but they also want us to indicate what we're meeting on. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Anything from anyone else?
Oh, I
Oh,
was just
sorry.
getting started.
Okay.
So I was thinking item B, we could eliminate entirely. Because the ministry on page 3 of the front pages.
Okay,
So
so
Ministry of
under
Housing.
Ministry of Housing, you're saying, okay,
And that they wrote us back to the advocacy letter we sent saying you need to talk to BC Housing. So under section 3, item C, we do have BC Housing, those very same items. So I think we could eliminate B.
Okay.
And in its stead, I'd like to add Ministry of Citizen Services, their real property division, who we advocated with in 2022 for a telecommuting hub. And Councillor Lajeunesse, you were just mentioning the one in Langford seems to be dead on its feet. So our thinking in that advocacy work was that we have 250 provincial employees in Sooke, and maybe they could have a home away from home. So I was thinking that would be worth following up on.
add citizen, strike
Yes.
Ministry of Housing,
Yeah.
add Citizen Services and what was it?
Well, Citizen Services and within Citizen Services is the real property division. And
Okay, I
that's
think we
all.
can leave it at Citizen Services
Sure.
and then we can add the piece around the
Yeah.
co-working hub. Okay,
And under that same section, last year we requested a meeting with the Minister of Transportation and he said, no, thank you. He hasn't got time. And so maybe meeting with staff would be an alternate or better way to advocate for our Highway 14 needs.
maybe, but we had a meeting with their staff recently.
we did in public here,
Yes.
right? So maybe they would speak differently and.
Okay, well, let's add Ministry of Transportation
Yeah.
staff.
So they have Highways and Regional Services Division. Yeah, that's the primary,
Okay,
and.
so a Highway 14 progress and status
Yeah.
update. Okay,
Yeah, that's all.
okay. Everyone's good? Okay, before we go to a motion on this, I'll ask if members of the public would like to comment on this particular item of today's agenda. This is an actual report that is open for public comment. And we will require your name and which local government you call home.
William Wallace from Sooke. I was hoping to start off with something very uplifting about climate, but we'll get to that later. But in regard to what you're addressing right at the moment, I sat in with two presentations, one by the Ministry of Transportation and one from BC Transit. Both of them have no solution to our congestion problem. I don't know if you were there, but I didn't hear any ringing solutions to what everyone in this community feels is the number one pressing problem, which is Highway 14. We've spent a lot of money advocating going with cap in hand, trying to beg for some more money, but no more money's not coming for that to solution anything in the next that people want solutions for. So it's up to you, our council and our municipality and our tax system and our development cost charge, which is going to be addressed coming up, to come up with a solution that people want right now. You have the money. You're spending $3 million on a bridge. You're spending $6 million on charter. You're spending so much money here, there, and everywhere. And we have a solution, which is the Phillips through bypass that needs to get done. And we as a community want to get done right now. It's a solution to a lot of climate problems. It's a solution to congestion problems. And all we do is, once again, we have a list of people, a list of things. If wishes were horses, beggars would ride. We go out and beg for more money to solve our problems. I just think we need to address people's concerns. You'll see petitions, you'll see solutions, and you then have to come up with the money and fix it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers today? Yes, Councillor Bateman.
I had one more,
Okay,
and that would be the Agricultural Land Commission.
okay.
I was thinking that we have until August, what is it, August 21st to confirm appointments with these ministry staff and commissions. So the ALC, it strikes me that Councillor St. Pierre did remarkable work in 2019 with the minister at the time in a meeting with her, and maybe we could talk to the Agricultural Land Commission about creative approaches to fallow farmland in Sooke, getting it up and running.
Okay. So we'll add that, the Agricultural Land Commission, I can't read my own writing, creative approaches to fallow land in Sooke, fallow farmland. Yeah. Councillor St. Pierre is, we'll be pulling you into that meeting, Councillor. Yes, and I know that we have a timeline, but we also have a lot coming our way. So that's why it's just good to finish this. And then if we've missed something, we can go back to it, as opposed to let's do this part, let's do this, right? So just, there is a strategy behind this. Okay. All right, so there is a resolution. In this case, it is quite lengthy. So I'm going to just ask that a member of council move the staff recommendation as presented. That's moved by Councillor Pearson. And we just require the one mover. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Pearson?
No, it's a fairly comprehensive list, and I'm sure that we'll be prepared and use our time wisely if we can get some of these meetings, because we have some pressing needs in our community. So hopefully we get some positive responses, but it's good for us to advocate. Thank you.
If I may.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I would just like some clarity. You had mentioned, Mayor, that we were moving the staff recommendation, whereas I believe council had made some suggested changes to that through this conversation, in particular in relation to the deletions. We can speak about what you wanted to add separately than the recommendation. I just wanted to be clear that it was the staff recommendation with the proposed removals.
Yes, with the proposed removals, additions and deletions. Yeah, so everything that we've just talked about, it's the whole package. Thank you for that.
So including the additions as well.
The additions that we've added and everything we've deleted.
Oh, thank you very much. I just wanted to be super clear on how we were managing that. Thank you. I know Heather's typing away, trying to capture everything, so you can see that as well.
Yes, and for those of you in the gallery today, this is our corporate officer speaking, not a member of council. So,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like,
my
where's our voice
apologies for
coming
not
from?
introducing
Okay, yes,
myself.
it's everything that, yeah, both of those. Thank you for that correction, corporate officer.
And if I may, could we just get information on the fowl farmland? It looks like we did not capture that bit, just for clarification.
Okay, so that would be with ministry staff, or actually it's with the Agricultural Land Commission.
Under part 3.
Under part 3. And it's building on a presentation that Councillor St. Pierre made a few years ago to the Minister of Agricultural directly, who was then MLA Popham. And it was about how you could introduce small scale farming and the like. I don't remember all of it, so I don't want to sort of reinvent this, but he did do a very solid presentation and has a template. And given that we do have lands within our community that are in the ALC and are currently fallow, it's just to share what we're learning and hearing from a community with the ALC directly. Does that
Yeah,
about cover it?
That does, and there's some other creative ideas, including
Yes.
potentially locating a tiny home village or other things. on-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we can look to prepare this. So part of what this is my message to both council and staff, is for any of the pieces you may hold as individuals on this, is you need to start funneling them through to corporate services so we can prepare the briefing documents going forward. So we're not, because then as we get confirmation of a meeting, we have to provide more information at that time. So that's why we want to start this work immediately, so it can be builded up. And if anything changes, then we can remove them and focus down on where we need to be by the time September rolls around. So yeah, small scale farming and other, except, well, maybe Councillor Bateman at ALC, it says small scale farming.
Well,
Is there anything else to add to that bullet at this point? Into the microphone.
yeah, I think our idea is we'd like to discover the ALC's tolerance for being creative with farmland. Tolerance for creative ideas. Housing. Well,
Tension is sort of both, is farming and small scale.
well,
It's
there's
both.
Councillor St. Pierre, maybe.
Yeah, it's probably
yes,
best if
can
he answered
give
it.
us-
Councillor?
I think we could go to the ELC with an update on progress so far with some of the proposals. So basically, an update, and also just reiterating the previous, which is more or less a look at how small farmland or small acreage ends up becoming fallow, and our requests in terms of policy changes.
Okay, can you make that a more succinct bullet? Or does this work? Small scale farming dash tolerance for creative housing ideas.
Well, I think the creative housing ideas is going to be something that the ALC is not going to want to hear, period. That's why I'm going to recommend staying away from that. But there was work around specifically what's called a home plate concept, but I think that's too much for the resolution that we're looking for, and too many details in the resolution. And I can get into that when we present to the ALC. But basically, it would be an update on, I guess we could call it update on home plate project in Sooke, and further discussions on having productive smaller acreage.
Okay, so we're gonna strike out the tolerance for creative housing layout. That's wise to take that out. Update on home plate project in Sooke.
And home plate is one word.
Home plate is one
And
word.
Home plate is one word.
Okay.
And discussion on having small acreage become agriculturally productive, or discussion on challenges for small acreage being agriculturally productive.
Okay, just pause for a moment so our staff can get this.
Absolutely.
Discuss on, sorry, I'm gonna go back to you, counselors. Update on home plate project in Sooke and discussion on challenges.
Challenges for making smaller acreage agriculturally productive.
Okay. Smaller acreage is more productive.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Smaller acreage is more productive. Smaller acreages. As we all stare at the typist. Okay, that's good. Counselor Bateman? I just like to
Stay, that's a lowercase a, acreage. Sorry, Heather. It's me. And then with a semicolon and other creative housing ideas.
Okay. Counselor St. Pierre, I don't know if you see this, but Counselor Bateman has just added to that and other creative housing ideas.
I think we can talk about housing in terms of the home plate, because the home plate is about housing. I'm just concerned that anything that talks about housing in relation to ALR land is automatically going to bring the mental blocks in place, and they're going to shut down on us.
Okay.
That's been my experience so far. I think that even if we're discussing housing, and we are going to be discussing housing to some degree, because that's what the home plate project is about. I strongly advise, because this is what came through from ALC staff and from anybody that's spoken to, not to talk about housing on on ALR land, I should say.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. We'll take that out.
No. Anytime we talk about village, hamlet, all they hear is you're going to put a whole bunch of houses on farmland, and that's what we were designed to prevent. They've been under siege to have houses built on them forever. They have strong reflexes in that direction. I think that if we can explain the intent, and that's what the home plate project is supposed to be about. It's supposed to have higher density on a tiny footprint within acreage, but there's a whole system behind it. There's a lot of work that goes to protect the farmland. I think that they will appreciate it, and they have appreciated it, and they're the ones who suggested the home plate to us initially. So I think that'll find traction. But if we're looking at creative housing ideas, what they hear is definitely you're going to develop any way you can on land to put more housing that's agricultural and farmland. And it's gonna set off alarm bells.
Yep, I would agree with you, given what we've heard in the past. So I would put a period after, remove everything after productive and put a period there, productive, full stop.
And let's be clear, the Homely project is about putting more density of people on a small area on farmland. And one of the challenges for making small acreage productive is workers and finding a place for them to live. So that discussion will be had.
But the intention here is to produce more food on these properties, and it's just.
Absolutely, absolutely. We need to make that very clear from the outset and not be talking about housing as the problem we want to solve.
Oh, it's food security is the problem
Correct.
we're solving.
Correct.
Okay, good. All right. Anything from anyone else? We're on the motion. We've made the changes. Yes, Councillor Bateman, anything?
Well, I'll just say, once we're in the door, we can discover more about the tolerance of the ALC for practices. You know, I did request a presentation by the ALC last year. They'd offered to come to councils across BC, and nothing has followed from that. So this would be an opportunity to just see where their tolerance lies. Because there's some great ideas out in the community of people living on the land and also growing food on the land. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. So that's been moved. We've made all the changes. Our staff know what we're doing. That's great. So I'll call the question. All those in favor, please. Thank you. And that's carried unanimously. Okay. So our next item up here, 7.2, award of wastewater force main project.
Perfect. Thank you. And through the CAO and through your worship to council, on May 3rd, the district closed a tender for the West Coast Road wastewater force main project. It's the last component for the wastewater treatment plant expansion. Milestone Contracting submitted the low bid for the project. Total of 7 tenders were received. The total prices rounded to the nearest dollar and excluding GST have been presented in the report. Total project budget has been established of $3.1 million to cover any unforeseen circumstances as well as inflated bids. Staff are looking for a recommendation for council's consideration that council approve the award of the wastewater force main project to Milestone Contracting for the amount of $1,617,000 and $17,569.
Okay, a couple of questions to our CAO. Please remind me where this work will be occurring and will it have an impact on traffic?
Through the mayor, I will defer to our Director of Engineering, our operations, Mr. Carter, to respond.
Thank you. Through your worship to council, the project's going to be occurring from approximately Maple Avenue South down to the wastewater treatment plant on Highway 14. Everything is generally out of the traffic problems of Sooke in the town center. Upon the award of the contract, we will be meeting with our consultant Stantec as well as the successful proponent for the project to go over the schedule. Impact should be minimal on this project as it can be completed on the side of the road and any crossings will be conducted under night work.
Okay, Maple down to the plant, which would be, I guess, the Woodside Farm on this side of, I can't remember the cross street before Ella on that side of the road, but on the highway in the right of way. But it must cross the highway at some point.
Yes, there's going to be one crossing on the highway and that'll be coordinated with the expectations from the ministry to have minimal impact on traffic and conducted outside of peak hours or at night. Okay,
it's our wastewater folks. We don't like to hear about disturbance on the highway, but I also don't feel that we want us internal systems back up either. Other questions from members of council before I turn to the public? Councillor Bateman?
Yeah, so thank you for that. Will this be the route of the new sidewalk that will be developed along there? Along West Coast Road?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Bateman, the district staff have worked with the ministry, so we do have a design for the highway down there. Most of this work will be conducted in the right of way, not necessarily underneath the sidewalk, but it would be kind of in the shoulder of the road.
Right, on the north side.
On the north
Yes,
side.
of course. Okay, thank you.
Anything else from members of council? I'll ask if there's any members of the public that would like to speak on the award of the wastewater force main project. Okay, please come forward and reintroduce yourself.
William Wallace from Sooke. My concern on this is Highway 14 and the disruption and the safety hazard of that stretch of highway that goes down to the treatment plant. Right now, we have significant problems with boat trailers being stowed alongside the highway besides Prestige. We've made a number of suggestions to the Ministry of Highway in terms of making it extremely safe. It's extremely unsafe for bicycles, for pedestrians, and the only thing that's safe for is cars going down there. And now you're gonna dig up all along the side there, and I don't know how long this procedure takes, but my concern is safety along the highway, and hope you consult with Ministry of Transport. Okay.
So perhaps to our CAO, do you have a response to the member of the public? I understand this is on the north side of the road.
Yes, through your worship, it would be on the north side of the road, and I believe we would be in contact with Modi on any roadworks occurring along the highway there. It is their highway, so safety, I'm not sure if there's if it's covered in the permitting that we would be required to work with Modi on to receive as well. If Mr. Carter has anything further to add.
Yeah, that's correct. Every aspect of this job is under an MOTI permit. So everything's been coordinated with the ministry and safety has been addressed and will be addressed through the course of the project.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from members of the public?
There we go. Diane Bernard on Penang Road. And I'm concerned about, is this going to impact children walking, going into Little Blue School at the top of Ella Road? Children moving back and forth, walking to school?
Okay, Mr. Carter, just through the CAO to Mr. Carter, if you could just talk a little bit more on the location, the timing, and when the work is going to occur.
Yeah, no, we anticipate the project to go into September, but everything will be addressed in terms of public safety, pedestrian access, and we don't see it impacting kids' walking route to school. And if it is something that needed to be maintained, it would be addressed in the course of the project.
All right, thank you. And I guess one more would be, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, just, I would think that since there will be flaggers on site, that the safety will be improved during the construction period. It's my guess.
Yes, so through any construction project, there's going to be sort of abiding by construction zone requirements for safety. So it will be a safe project and executed duly under the ministry's permit.
Councillor Beddoes,
I was just gonna move the motion.
go ahead, please.
That the committee recommend council approve the award of wastewater force main project to Milestone Contracting for $1,617,569 excluding GST.
That's moved. Would you like to speak to it?
No, that's a long time coming. It's needed and let's get on with it. Great.
Thank you. Anything else from anyone? Councillor Pearson.
Yeah, we're just moving this today, committee of the whole, to come to regular council for the approval. That would be my question.
Yes, well, no, well, yes
Amy?
and no. Yes, because we are sitting as committee of the whole, but we did resolve into committee of the whole. So today we would resolve out and then endorse all the recommendations. So that'll happen later today as well. Yes. Okay. Anything else from anyone? I'll call the question then. All in favor, please. And any opposed? Are you opposed or in favor? He was in favor. Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Next up is 7.3 development cost charges, minor update.
Thank you through the CAO and through the worship to council. District staff has undertaken a minor update review of the development cost charge program. The minor update entitles basically adjusting project costs based on inflation, as well as recent data that we have within the district of Sooke to bring the program project costs closer to and close as we can to actual program or actual construction costs in order to collect the appropriate amount under the development cost charge program. Again, it's a minor update where no projects can be added nor deleted. We're looking for council support to give the initial first, second, and third reading to the development cost charge amending bylaw, and for council support to direct staff to submit the development cost charge minor update bylaw to the ministry for ministerial approval.
Okay, thank you very much. There's a lot attached to this report here, so thank you for providing all of the information. Any questions to our staff member? Councillor Bateman.
Yeah. So thanks for seeing this report again. I see that you've added at the very last page is the DCC projects comparison sheet. And I think that was the critical question last time. So you're showing us here that well, each of these projects have on the transportation side, they've all gone up by at least 29% at the low and 82 at the high, I think, or 129 at the high. So you're doing 35% across all land categories. Is that an average based also on the sanitary and parks programs, which have smaller increases?
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor Bateman. So the prices are considered through the DCC payable. They're all updated as per their individual categories, but you will see that across all categories for the increases for the total DCCs that are payable, which are illustrated in the report.
Okay, and again, just quote, I think this is direct from your report, that these DCC minor updates was a very unfortunate term, minor. If we could change that languaging, because I know 35% for our development community is going to be a hit, of course. Of course, they're paying that with operational costs, because as you state, these reflect updated project construction costs encompassing inflationary changes and the most recently tendered prices for construction. So this is just what it costs these days. Yeah. Confirming that through the CAO.
Yes, correct, through your worship, to Councillor Bateman. I think with this DCC minor update, it's not necessarily our language, it's just how it's referred to with the changes happening with strictly costs is how it's considered a minor. Adding or removing projects would be considered major updates, which go through a different process, more extensive process. And yeah, the reflection of this is just to update the costs to the current costs that we know these projects are costing us. When we first updated the DCC bylaw a couple of years ago, it was, educated guesses at the time. Some of them we had further designs. Of course, now with actually completing some of these projects and getting further design work has given us more confidence on what these projects are actually costing, which then sprung into the minor DCC update. And as well, that's the feedback I think we've heard from the developing community is they just want certainty on what things are going to cost. And of course, nobody wants things to cost more. However, this is what it is. And if we delay this at this point, then it's just going to come down later. These are what these projects are going to cost the district. So funding will have to be secured for them.
One other small point here. I look back at Urban's recommendations from whenever that was 2020, 21, and they suggested the district should apply a CPI inflation factor as permitted by the legislation annually to a maximum of 4 years. Have we been doing that with DCC?
Through your worship to Councillor Bateman, no, we haven't. When we initially did the DCC bylaw, like Ms. Gray alluded to, we only had some preliminary costs. We've advanced a lot of the designs now. We knew that a minor update was going to happen in the near future. So we've addressed it to this point. Applying a small CPI again will it will add to the costs a bit annually, but it also makes it very complex. And there's a lot of uncertainty then for the development community, with grace periods of 1 year for basically any in-stream permit applications for development permits. So we've chosen to go the route of a minor update. And then as per Urban's recommendations, probably within the next 3 to 5 years to do another major update as we progress with a lot more of the infrastructure projects and designs for the district.
Okay, other comments from members or questions from members of council? And I think we know through going through budget that without the DCCs, then the other lever is property taxes. Or not doing infrastructure work. Those are sadly the options that we're stuck with. Councillor St. Pierre, okay, I see you now, Councillor St. Pierre.
Yeah, I was going to move the motion if that's possible, that the committee recommend council give first, second, and third readings to the Development Cost Charges Amendment Bylaw number 909-775-01-2024, and that the committee recommend council direct staff to submit the Development Cost Charge Minor Update Bylaw to the ministry for approval.
That's moved. Would you like to speak to it?
No, it's needed to give everyone certainty, and especially the development community. It's a lot of money, but they know better than anyone what the costs are like now.
Thank you. Anything, actually, I was remiss. I need to actually, as chair, table this to following public comment. I neglect public before I entertain the motion. So as chair, I'm just going to table this. I'll return to members of council after we've heard from the public. So okay, please come ahead and introduce yourself to us.
Sorry. William Wallace from Sooke. I get back to the problem that I originally started talking about, which is Highway 14 and congestion. Sooke has experienced unprecedented growth. We've come to what I think is capacity here for development, yet we continue to struggle along with decisions about how we are continuing to develop. This development cost charges, I think, is insignificant, and we've been told all the way along, even from our new chief executive officer, that development charges are not paying the way for our development. We have a $43 million infrastructure deficit that we're facing coming up here. So to continue to encourage development, I think is just ill-advised. We have a new Democratic Party shoving something down our throat as a community, saying we have to develop. Our only recourse is to say, no, we will not develop until you fix what we have a series of problems here. So you have the power to set these development cost charges so it will hinder development and send a message to our, I fear, non-democratic, new Democratic Party that we have control over our community and we want to have a say in how it's developed. And we have significant problems right here with our greenhouse gases and our climate and our congestion. So that's my take on development cost charges. It's a power that you have to say no to the province, that we control our own development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other members of the public wish to comment on development cost charge? Oh, okay. All right, so I'll return to members of council if there's anything further you would like to add or say, because I've only heard from Councillor St. Pierre thus far. Okay. You're all looking at each other. I don't know what this means. So Councillor Pearson, then Lajeunesse, and then Bateman.
Yeah, we're development cost charges are the way of paying the bill, but every development cost charge that we're putting in there ends up making the houses more expensive in our community. And the affordable piece that is the gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger all the time. And the dream of people owning houses is getting fainter and fainter and fainter for young people. And every time we make a decision like this, it's adding to the cost of a house. It's not being borne by the developers. It's being borne by the people who eventually buy those houses. But somehow we have to come up with the infrastructure costs to support the houses. You know, there's tremendous pressure, not only on us, but everybody in Canada. We heard that loud and clear at FCM from 3 levels of government: build more houses, build more houses, build more houses, because 500,000 people a year are coming into Canada. Yeah, many of them do. But anyway, so I didn't mean to debate with somebody in the public. I apologize for that. But we have to be mindful that there's a threshold at some point where affordability becomes a dream for other people. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse.
I agree with what Councillor Pearson says. But the reality is our infrastructure is in need of improvement and expansion, so that this is the only way to come up with the funds to make those improvements, other than property tax, which is not fair to residents.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'll echo those comments, except to say that, we definitely need to, you know, these projects are coming through already. We have almost $12 million is dedicated for the Throop Road extension. So Mr. Wallace noted that getting that built is critical. I think it's a 32 million, if I've read the phased projects correctly. So there's a third of the cost of that. So maybe we'll get some more building community grants, and then there's the question of the borrowing referendum to one day be discussed in these chambers. Otherwise, we're not going to get this Throop Road connector completed anytime soon.
Councillor St. Pierre.
A lot has been said, but I'm going to repeat what Councillor Bateman was saying about the building out our master plan. The DCCs are required, and accurate DCCs that actually reflect actual construction costs are required. I'm also going to repeat what a lot of people said, which is this is actually passing. If we don't actually have accurate costs now, they go to developers and then go to home owners and home buyers, then instead it gets passed on to us and to the taxpayers in the future. And it's still the taxpayers that are bearing it. It's just, it's not necessarily going to the people who are getting the benefit first and foremost. I would also suggest that at this point, single family detached residential homes are actually a dream rather than a reality for most of the public and for almost all young people. I don't know any young person who expects to own a home at this point in time. I really don't. But the best we can do actually is to make sure that development actually does pay for infrastructure. And I think this is the way to do it, or one of the ways.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, just on a little bit of a positive note is recently a number of us were in the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and there was unanimous from all the municipalities, we need a new funding model. We get all the taxes collected. You pay all these taxes for various things, tobacco, gasoline, everything. And in the end, we get 2% of all those taxes to do all the infrastructure. So right now we're stuck. If we want infrastructure done, we have to go to DCCs or borrow and beg. And I think at the meeting I was at, that the federal government, providing it doesn't change, were listening to us and said that there is something more that needs to be done. We can't just keep going back to the local taxpayer to pay for some of this stuff. And you can use the Throop Road extension as one of them, $32 million. You could see if we had to put that tax bill on the taxpayers, and you can argue you can take it from here, take it from there. But the bottom line is that is a tremendous amount of money for a community of our size. But in order to move the surface traffic off of Highway 14, which is our responsibility, that is going to have to happen in some form or another. So it's not as though we're ignoring the problem, but DCCs right now is the only avenue we have that we can collect some of that money. Until we get a new funding model with the federal and the provincial governments, that's the way we're going to have to do it. So just a comment.
Well, and it sort of depends, just to add to what you said, it really depended on who was addressing the delegates. Some leaders indicated that their expectation is for every local government to increase their housing supply by 15% annually to receive any type of infrastructure dollars whatsoever, to not increase fees, to fast track permits. And there's a whole list that I have. And I would have better notes, but I somehow managed to empty my full water bottle into my purse. So everything is drying at the moment. But just as an example, like that was rather alarming to me to deal with. It's also noted that the property tax framework as we know it today was developed under Queen Victoria's reign. And that was quite some time ago. And cities today and what we're dealing with today, even my term in sitting in these chambers has changed dramatically. Local governments across BC and elsewhere, it's not only the downloaded it or the impact of infrastructure, it's every other demand, from the helping to fund the food bank to infrastructure for amenities, to all the other advocacy pieces, advancing healthcare services, finding childcare, looking at prenatal services, every single list that we have. We have not only, there's one crisis after another in terms of even food security for young ones and safe ways to go to school. So it's a tremendous amount that we're impacted with. So to Councillor Bettle's point, there is a new framework, but really it's a question to ask over at that time when elections happen. But speaking of that, there is a provincial election around the corner. Candidates are out and knocking on doors. And so it's a good time to ask them, Highway 14 is your jurisdiction. It is the provincial responsibility. You've heard earlier of work that's occurring, of which we are doing under an approved provincial permit. Wastewater line, which is essential to our community, not only for the livability, but the harbor and the basin as well. But we still need to work under a provincial permit because the Highway 14 is a provincial responsibility. Yes, it services Sooke, but it also serves everyone westward of us. And there's growth occurring westward of us as well, of which we have no say in whatsoever. Are we in order of government? Unfortunately, no. There are two level orders of government, the federal government, the provincial government, and we are a creature of the province. That's how we are reminded. And of that, we have our legislation, the Community Charter and the Local Government Act, and that determines how we do our business. And out of necessity of the impact of livability and the crisis that residents are, we're doing everything we can to support every community group, not-for-profit, sport agency, and the like, to build up livability within our community. Solving Highway 14, and I'm drifting, is multifaceted. And we require support from 7 provincial ministries, at least, I would say. I'm looking at staff from why are 3 schools located on a highway? Why is one of our schools a century old with a significant egress problem? Why are there no overpasses for children to navigate, which would help alleviate that? Why are there forced catchments occurring? We have residents that live in proximity to one school that have to be driven to another because they cannot attend the school that they're attending to. There's a shortage of school buses. There's no transit service to service these children under 12. There's not enough after-school child. Like, there's a whole list. It's a multi-pronged solution. And then getting to this point, because I've drifted, I'm trying to focus back, is we need to diversify where our revenue comes from so that we can make livability that much easier for our residents who are already struggling day to day. Not everyone, but certainly some. And if that wasn't the case, the food bank wouldn't have such a long oversubscribed list of residents that they're helping. So in this case, yes, unfortunately, I know we've heard from the developers. They're not happy with this. So to our member of the public's point, they've said it might stall the development. Well, here, we've increased the fees. So they have to pay to play and pay to invest in this community. And yes, it gets transferred on to the resident. But even if we didn't do this, would that savings flow to the resident? It'll go to what the market will bear, what the market was willing to pay, and that is outside of our scope. So we're doing what we can to control what is in our lane, at the same time doing everything we can to improve the movement of goods and services and humans within our community, while recognizing we are in an environment of significant species, and care for their well-being is also a priority of this council. So thank you. I will stop talking and call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None. That's carried unanimously. Thank you for listening to me. We'll go on to 7.4, which is public participation policy.
Thank you. So through the CAO to council, earlier this year, council directed staff to develop a public participation policy. During this discussion, consideration was also given to a correspondence policy. Staff feel that a standalone correspondence policy is preferable. While we hope to introduce the correspondence policy at the same time as the public participation policy, given staffing and our new Deputy Director of Corporate Services joining the team in recent days, and that role being integral to the administration of a correspondence policy, we'll look to bring that forward at an upcoming meeting. That said, the intent of today is for staff to check in with council to ensure that we're on the right track. As written, the draft public participation policy provides what I hope is a clear purpose, reflecting our dedication to transparency, meaningful public participation, and the role of public participation in enhancing municipal governance. The draft provides a policy overview, division of council and staff, the division between responsibilities for council and staff, and expectations. It also identifies the International Association of Public Participation as a framework for engagement levels. To provide a local example of this framework in action, in mobilizing the rock crusher on charters just recently, staff involved Journey Middle School administration and Sooke Fastball to determine the hours. And then we informed the community of the activity. So that's an example where the IAP2 principle was in action. There was one stakeholder group that was on the involved side of the spectrum, and another that was on the inform. Of note, specific tactics are not reflected in the draft policy, as these would be captured in the administrative procedures and subsequent promotional or educational materials, a sample of which I've included in the staff report. With that, I'll highlight the questions from the report for council and look forward to the discussion. So those 3 questions that were proposed in the report: how well does this draft policy align with the values and expectations of council regarding public participation? Are there other areas of responsibility for council that would help with the successful implementation of this policy? And lastly, or anything else that you have to add, are there any additional considerations that council needs to support effective public engagement to aid you in decision-making? So with that, I'll look forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you very much for introducing the report. Councillor St. Pierre.
Thank you very much. I like the policy direction overall. I think it's excellent. I have some, not concerns, but some thoughts in terms of clarity. One of the things that I'm continuously concerned about is actually the clarity in terms of language. I think it's very easy for staff with excellent training experience to use language that just is not very clear to the public, or sometimes even to council. I would ask if this is something that needs to be in policy, or if this is something that wants to go into the administrative side of things in operations. But I would love to see something at a policy level that basically says we're going to actually put our language, whenever at all possible, very approachable. So it's an equity question. Not everyone has the same level of education. Not everyone is going to grasp what's going on. And that means you can't participate because you don't know what's going on, or you may simply have fears because you don't understand what's happening. I do think it's very important in terms of how participation happens. I think it affects how much participation and the quality of participation. I noted the model from Coquitlam. Again, I really like the information, but the way it was presented, far too many words, way too dense. If that was a PowerPoint presentation, I would want to cry. I love the work they've done in terms of what they're saying, but the way they're saying it, presenting to the public, is not actually best practice. I recommend not doing anything like that, and I'm sure you wouldn't. But again, clarity. Simplicity, graphics. If this is a policy question, fine. It should be included as a part of the policy. Otherwise, I just want to know that this is being considered.
Thank you. Is it maybe just also just to add to what Councillor St. Pierre has just said, is this sometimes there's a lot of heavy work behind and then the front work looks very light and easy. So in terms of what we're seeing from Coquitlam, is that like the heavy work that's occurring? So forward facing, it meets what Councillor St. Pierre has said, which I agree with.
Thank you. And again, through the CAO. So this is exactly the conversation and feedback staff are looking to receive. So as we look to introduce a new policy, that's what we want to hear from you. So we make sure that hopefully when we circle back with the draft policy, that it is in a line and we're speaking the same language. So the same plain language, to use Councillor St. Pierre's remarks.
Thank you so much.
And just to add a little bit that might help this visual, Councillor St. Pierre, in fact, everyone is, as you know, we've been doing like local government school for quite some time. And this is where school children come and visit Municipal Hall and learn about what's occurring within their own municipality. And we've done different things over the years, but I feel we've really nailed it now. And so it looks easy, but there's been a lot of behind the scenes work to get it to that point where school children are engaged and involved in the process. So they learn about the municipal services that are offered. They're also given the opportunity to spend some money on and to show what their signboards that they can select from, that they can choose from. They get the messaging, and then there's a lesson in democracy of which they participate in. And there's an outcome as well as completion. So a lot of heavy work has gone into the delivery of that, but we've been receiving really good feedback from the schools that have participated recently that the message is carrying home now on local government services. But it's timely that we have this. Others, who's next? Councillor Pearson.
Thank you. My question was around and I really like the general policy principles and the council responsibilities is very clearly laid out. The one section that I kind of was questioning, and I don't mean it in a negative way, is the scope limitations, right? The wording in that scope limitations leads me to sort of draw a conclusion. And I'd like it to be like, we need to ramp up because where's the feedback loop to providing if there is limitations in scope so that we know if the policy is working. That's kind of, and I know that you've captured that somewhere down near the evaluation piece. So I like that. I just kind of the wording around that scope limitation was a little challenging for me, not in a negative sense, just that how others may interpret that, what that actually means. Right. So thank you.
Thank you for that feedback.
But great policy overall. Thank you.
Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'd agree. This is a very strong public participation policy. It seems to reflect current practice and it's now formalizing it. I must say, I really liked Coquitlam's engagement framework. I think if you're looking at tiered communications, a document of this substance is exactly what many people need and would like to read and get true full 360-degree context about. But then you can tier it so that you do have simpler, more approachable, right down to your elementary school students. So I think in section 4, supporting communications, you can be very creative with that. And yeah, and I think I remember what Ben Hyman from the library told us a few weeks back, that 40% of people within the library region are challenged in terms of their literacy levels. So yeah, we do need tiered ways to be as equitable, inclusive, et cetera, as you've stated here.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, thank you. I think you have the direction you need. I just urge you that keep it simple, not too long and drawn out, and that it can be understood by the layman, which we are. So I look forward to devil's in the details, and the details are to come. So thank you.
Anything else? It's also time. So even if someone did have an interest in reading something robust, there's only so much time, in which case they just want to read the highlights. Life gets busy. So it's like, okay, what are the 4 points that I need to know? And then, okay, fine. And then everything else, save that for that rainy day and add it to the other items that are there. Okay. Anything else that you need from us at this point?
No, that's everything. Thank you very much for that direction. I appreciate it.
Okay, so I'll turn to members of the public that may want to speak on this particular item, the 7.4 public participation policy. Okay.
Sinclair Phillip. I wanted to speak earlier, but was not able to speak on previous topics that were brought up. So I'm asking for a bit of indulgence. In terms of just public participation, I would request that we start to develop guidelines more along the other municipalities in the CRD at these meetings so that we have equivalent presentation times, because we're really cut short. In most parts of the CRD, a member of the public has 5 minutes or four to 5 minutes to speak, rather than 2 at most of our public meetings. And I can easily present you with that information, but I think it's easily accessible to you. I just wanted to make a couple of comments regarding previous things that were said. I think that the mayor's description of all of the breakdown in our society, and she delineated quite a long list, are representative of a breakdown in every level of our social fabric, and a breakdown in our political institutions, including municipal. And I am really concerned on a subject that Mr. Wallace brought up earlier, and that is when you say we've been talking for quite a few years in this community about a lack of infrastructure, and most people didn't really understand what that meant 5 or 10 years ago. Now, when you say infrastructure, people think, well, road, we don't have a decent road, and it keeps getting worse by the week. And we are lacking infrastructure on many levels of community, which you've been bringing up here. And I agree with Mr. Wallace that we need to do everything we can to temporarily slow or put a halt to any kind of development until our infrastructural levels catch up. I don't know who's going to bail us out, the taxpayer, the provincial government, the federal government, but we need a solution before we keep going on. And just one last note, we tend to think of the United States and the private sector when it comes to housing, and our housing policies in Canada and the United States are a complete and total failure. And I would encourage all the members of council to look at Vienna, where 60% of housing is public housing, and you don't hear people complaining about 1, rent evictions, and 2, affordable housing. Everyone who needs affordable housing in Vienna has affordable housing, and municipalities play a major role. And my daughter lives in the Netherlands, and 40% of people are on public housing. And once again, you don't hear the lack of affordability because they have social policies that encompass all levels of society, unlike what we have here in British Columbia and Canada.
Okay, thank you. I'll just clarify that for speaking, it's addressed through the council procedural bylaw. So we can take that away, and when the next update comes is look at that. But that's what determines when members of the public speak and when they don't. It does vary across the region, and only to speak at the CRD board or committee, you need to register in advance to get on the agenda. You can't just walk in and speak. Just say, I know that because I sit there regularly. Okay. Anything else on this policy from members of the public? Okay, so I'll turn back to members of council, and the recommendation is here that the committee recommend council provide staff direction. Looking here. We've done that, so I'm just looking for some language here.
Through this CAO, I think staff what they have, they need, what we need, to move this forward. So it would then we would bring it forward, to upcoming council meeting. So there's no further action required from council at this time.
Okay, I see Ms. Bagnall. Can you go ahead, please?
Thank you. In order to just move forward, it might be in order that council would just want to receive this report for information, just to close the loop, so we can get to the next item.
Okay, so that'll be then that the committee recommend council receive this report for information. So that would be moved by Councillor Pearson. Thank you. Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Pearson? No. Okay, it's covered. Anything from anyone else? Call the question. All those in favor then? Any opposed? None opposed. It's carried unanimously. Bear with me as chair here. I understand that some members of the public may want to speak on the delegation. So I'm going to ask if council would like to add a public input section on the delegation at this point. Okay, so we're just going to vary the agenda here. And there's a 7.5, and that is just any comments from the public on the delegation. And just for clarity on this, a delegation is where anyone can make application to address council. So yes, we receive information in advance sometimes we don't until the member or the member of the public is present. From there, if there's action that a council should take, then a council member would put a notice of motion forward that would bring it forward to an upcoming agenda, and then members of the public would be able to speak on it when it actually becomes and forms part of council business. So I'm sticking to not typical, but our procedural bylaw, which is grounded in Robert's rules and overall governance. That's why there's the report section is where members of the public speak, not on every delegation. But I understand some of you may want to speak to it, so we're adding that now. Okay, come on up and introduce yourself. And the reason why I'm doing that is members of the public that are viewing online and do not have the ability to come here will not know who you are. So it may seem redundant that you're doing this. It's not for the benefit of those present in the room. It's for those that are unable to attend today in person.
William Wallace from Sooke. I was hoping to talk a bit about this earlier after the delegation's presentation. I just want to thank them for helping to try to educate our community regarding the serious problem that we're in right now. And I think they're doing an excellent job, and we have a big job ahead of us to do. I just wanted to talk about something very positive. I was recently participated in the Edward Mellon Community School, a climate event that they organized. And a bunch of people from the community went and gave presentations. Businesses, individuals, we went on topics such as social justice, greenwashing, solar, sustainable farming. There was about 6 of us. 75 students showed up and participated in this event. And we're all concerned about our environment, not all concerned about the climate, and a lot of them nodded off. But it was encouraging to see that 75 students were taking the whole afternoon to participate with us and come up with very, very knowledgeable questions about our environment and the climate. So the message is getting out there, even to our youth. And I hope that we continue to encourage this participation in climate action and help solve one of our biggest climate problems, which is Highway 14. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Other speakers today?
Hello, I'm Helen Ritz from Sooke, and just a bit of an off the cuff comment. I wasn't planning on talking, but Catherine Hayhoe, I read her book. It was fabulous. It's a book that's written for the average person, so I highly recommend to read it. And one of the things that really stuck out when I read the book was she said that the best thing that we can do is lead by example. And she gave situations where if you put solar panels on your roof, that they did studies and the uptake of people putting solar panels on the roof in your neighborhood went up exponentially. And same with driving an electric car. If you buy an electric car, you'll influence your neighbors. So it was kind of interesting that one of the biggest things you can do is kind of be an influencer. So I would highly recommend that we all try to be influencers, especially the district of Sooke. If they saw you with the bank of electric cars or solar panels or something, it does influence the people around you. Thanks.
Thank you. Other speakers today? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. You would like to speak again? Okay, come on up. Need to wait till you get to the microphone.
In regard to influencing, I don't know if you know of it, but there's a program that BC Hydro puts out called net metering. It's where people put solar panels on their roofs and they generate electricity and they help the environment. There's 152 net metering homes in Sooke. It's a start, but I was quite shocked by there's that many people that are putting solars on the roof. And as previous person said, if we can get our large scale solar installations here, it will encourage people. The South Nation is doing on top of their medical center. There's a number of other public utility buildings, public buildings in here that could use solar that would encourage its use.
Thank you. Anything else from members of the public? I'll just add that I have a young child and I spend a lot of time in the schools, and it's not just the high school, but the elementary school is already taking a lot of action. They're doing a lot of proactive things, as is the middle school. So there's opportunities. Sometimes the students do town halls. I was very impressed by the level and the quality. It's coming out from grade 4s. They practice persuasive letters. I received several. I write back to them all and on the concerns that they have and what they see and what they're doing. So yes, the more time you spend with children, you'll find the hope and the light in the world. Just saying. The adults are the slow ones to catch up. Okay. So at this point, let me find where we are in all these papers. Okay, so we are going to reconvene our special meeting. So we are resolving out of the committee of the whole. So I like a motion to reconvene, to move out of committee of the whole into the special meeting by Councillor Beddoes. Thank you. And now sitting again as council, we have the recommendations from the committee of the whole. So.
Mayor? May
Yes.
I? You did put it on the floor, but you didn't vote.
Oh, yes, we didn't vote. Okay, all those in favor of reconvening? None opposed, that's unanimous. Thank you for catching that. So starting off first, or is it all of them from the committee of the whole, like the whole block is here, or are we going through them by section again? All of them.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so now that we're sitting as council, we'll be looking for a member of council to move the block of committee of the whole recommendations. Councillor St. Pierre?
I'd be willing to move a block, but I have something I'd like to add last minute. I'm sorry. We mentioned the food bank a couple of times, and that's another thing that's something else that we're actually paying for. But ideally, we would be looking for funding from the province to help with that type of thing. It's a social program. And that's not, or is that the feds? I don't know. It seems to me that we should be looking for additional funding for the food bank, additional support for our food bank while we're doing the advocacy work.
Okay, thank you for that. I see our corporate officer also has her hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Just for clarity for staff, just because this is, just to be super clear, I would recommend, just moving the block and then considering any additional motions after that time, just to be clean.
Okay, thank you for that procedural bit. So we'll look for a motion to move and second the block, and then we can add an amendment. Okay? So looking to move the block of recommendations, please. Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. So Ms. Bagnall has her hand up again. Did I do that right?
My apologies. So we wouldn't need an amendment just because it could be a standalone motion in addition to the motions. It doesn't change or negate any current motions. So council could move and carry the block and then just consider any additional direction separately.
Got you. Okay, thank you very much for that clarity. So is there anything on the block as it is right now? And then I'll come to your point, Councillor St. Pierre. Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, so item 1A here, the third bullet point we decided to remove.
Thank you for that catch. The RV homeowner pilot piece is removed from this, so that should have been removed. That's not an amendment. It was part of it. So in both places, it's coming out.
That's correct.
Okay. So can you pretend that it's not there? We have a new staff member and it's her first day, so a bit of grace. It's not supposed to be there. It's not there.
Miss Mayor, on my side, it's red for me, but it's just not showing up on your live share screen.
Okay,
I
that's totally
apologize.
fine. Thank you very much for that. We have it in hand. Anything else? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. And then in terms of the food bank, would that be to which ministry would that fall under is the question for me.
It's social. It could be municipal affairs. It could be health. Honestly, it could be ministry, mental health for that matter. And it might be a federal thing. I'm not sure.
Well, let's go to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs. That tends to be, I think, where we would bring items like that forward. So a motion to add sustainable funding for community food banks.
Yes.
To the Minister of Municipal Affairs request. Would you like to move that, Councillor?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the motion is moved to add sustainable funding for community food banks to Minister of Municipal Affairs. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Bateman. And staff, have that. They have it in hand. It just doesn't always appear right away on the screen. Okay, anything on the motion? I think we're all clear on that. Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, please. Any opposed? None opposed. That carries unanimously. Is there anything else from members of council? Okay, so then I will request, then I'll call the question. All those in favor? Did I do that twice?
Yep.
Sorry. Okay. I know, it's just the way it is. Okay, so now I'm going to move to item 10, a motion to close the meeting to the public. The council close the meeting to the public pursuant to the following subsection of the community charter. 92B, the considerations of information received and held in confidence relating to negotiations between the municipality and a provincial government or the federal government or both, or between a provincial government or the federal government or both and a third party. That's the subsection. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Beddoes. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. We will recess for 10 minutes and that'll give us time to get sorted. We will reconvene this meeting at 3:26.
Miss Mayor, just a reminder to
Sorry.
council.
I have to call the question. All those in, sorry, yes? Call the question, right? All those in favor of calling the question? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we're recessed. Thank you.
And just a reminder to council that we're in Bear Room for